Many mid-career professionals get scared about making a career pivot or taking the leap to find a new job because they don't think they can do it. They gather information and they know they need to be resilient. And if you've been one of those people who are trying to make such a change, you may feel as if you've been beaten up quite a few times with all of the no's you've received from applying for jobs and interviewing. Today, my guest will share his story from being a professional wrestler and pivoting his career that took him to the classroom and the boardroom. You'll learn why being resilient isn't just about being beaten up and getting back up again. It's about putting yourself first and going after what you want. And we'll show you how to do that. Let's get started. Hello, my friends. This is episode 186 of the Mid-Career GPS podcast. I'm your host, John Nerrill. I help mid-career professionals who feel stuck, undervalued, and underutilized show up to find a job they love or love the job they have by using my proven four-step formula. If you're enjoying the podcast, I would be so grateful if you would kindly tell 3 friends about it and share why you like it and what you learn. My podcast continues to grow because of people like you, and I thank you for your support. And if you're new to the podcast, thank you for being here. And I want to offer you something for free that I know will help you along your mid-career journey. You can visit my website at johnnerrill.com to download my free guide. It's called 5 Mistakes Mid-Career Professionals Make and Need to Stop Doing. Again, you can check the website or check my LinkedIn, but navigating your mid-career and avoiding these potential career pitfalls is pivotal to your success. I hope you'll check that guide out. Now, I was introduced to Wes Ray a few months ago by a mutual connection, and I was immediately fascinated by his career trajectory. Wes started his career as a professional wrestler in the late 1980s through the mid-1990s, while wrestling for various promotions throughout the Southeast. While in the corporate sector, Wes has held executive level positions such as Vice President, Corporate Compliance Officer, Chief Information Officer, and Chief Compliance Officer in the telecommunications, financial, and healthcare industries. Talk about a career pivot. Wes was a senior lecturer at Kennesaw State University, teaching at the undergraduate and executive MBA programs, and held administrative roles while serving as a career coach. He holds a Bachelor of Business Administration, a Master's of Business Administration, and Juris Doctor. Listen to Wes's incredible story if you ever thought you couldn't make a career transition or wondered how to do it. This is an inspirational and motivating conversation. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Wes Ray.
Hey, hi, everybody. I'm Wes Ray, author of the book, Off the Top Rope, From Professional Wrestling to the Corporate World to the Classroom. So looking forward to being here today with you all.
Wes, I have been looking forward to our conversation because if there is anybody who defines what a career transformation is, my friend, it is you, right? So when we connected, obviously you have a fascinating story. You're going to share that with us, but here's where I want to start off today. You've been a professional wrestler. You hold a BA in marketing, an MBA, and a JD. Now, it's safe to say that you do not fit the stereotypical mold of what most people may think a professional wrestler is or they become. So what made you pursue those degrees after your wrestling career?
Oh, thank you so much, John. And that's quite an interesting journey there, as you mentioned, for sure. John, I guess I was a little bit fortunate when I did enter into the world of professional wrestling. I had just graduated from college, so I was fortunate enough that I listened to my parents and got through and received a business degree. And then I wanted to kind of chase this dream. So after, I did that, a lot bigger then than I am now, a little different looking as well. But when you're in your 20s, you don't kind of think about that longevity and you think you're going to do this forever. And then all of a sudden the aches and pains and the body starts catching up to you. So I realized that this was not going to be a long-term, career for me. So when the time was right, I, started kind of easing out of that. Went to work at a customer service company, or working for customer service at a telecommunications company, and realized, I needed to focus on my career. So I started putting my MBA in my sights, and that's kind of, I knew I wanted to get into management. Just didn't know exactly what at the time, but wanted to get into management. So that started focusing that. I've had a little bit of a gap, and I don't know if I'd always recommend this to everybody, but it seems to be close to about a 10-year mark for me. So it was about 10 years after I'd graduated from my undergrad, I went ahead and pursued my MBA. And then started getting into the career that I wanted to get into, which was healthcare compliance at that time. HIPAA had just started. I was working for an early growth healthcare company and started working very closely with the legal department, working for legal counsel. And then after some conversations with a great mentor, said, JD is going to help you a lot. And I was like, I don't know if I want to be a practicing attorney and, doing all that kind of stuff. And he's like, no, just get the degree and you can do this with healthcare compliance. So again, it was close to about 10 years again after I'd obtained my master's, my MBA, and then went and did my JD. Again, a little different path. I probably would love to, backtrack a little bit and done it a little sooner. But, I think the point is you're never too late to learn. You can always continue to learn. And I saw that as a way to help me in growing my career.
It's such a great point. And as you're walking us through your career history, one of the things, Wes, that we talk about a lot on the podcast is that whenever you're networking or you're interviewing, the goal is to be memorable. You want to find a way to stand out above the other applicants or your competition. I'm curious, how much do you think your professional wrestling career either opened a door or got you an interview because you were different than other people?
Now, great question, John. And I truly believe that kind of that first, I kind of really call it that first job in what would be the corporate sector, which was customer service. And as anybody knows, if you've ever done customer service work, that's not something you probably want to make a 30, 40-year career out of. People aren't calling you and saying, hey, Wes, you're doing a great job today. I mean, just want to call and tell you that, right? There's always something either wrong with their bill or something's not working. And, we're customers as well. I understand. I get it. But it was interesting. The individual that ended up hiring me, it's amazing some of the same people that you don't realize are wrestling fans. And this was again in the early 90s or 90s at this point. So that did open a door for me. They're like, oh, hey, this, and I was able to, John, I think one thing I learned was, I'd been in front of thousands of people. I was comfortable being in front of people, working with other people. In wrestling, you have to work with other people. You have to, navigate the crowds and things of that nature and negotiation. So I started looking at some of those things I had learned there and interpersonal skills, and was able to apply that into customer service, which that's very big and part of customer service, because when that person calls, usually they're very upset. And I've dealt with very upset fans.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So it really helped me a lot. And I think that's where it kind of got me thinking about, look at these skills you have. I think sometimes people discount some of these skills. And I think that really helped me open the door for getting me in customer service, which is really what I wanted to do. I just really wanted to get in the door. And it was a great opportunity for me to learn. But having those experiences and that, and the person that hired me was like, oh, that's really cool. You did this. And, they thought that was neat. And before, they're talking about, hey, I know, do you know this person or that person?
Sure. Right. Well, that's it. Right. So all of a sudden there's a kind of bond or relationship that's there because there's some familiarity that exists. When you talk about transferring skills and thinking about your own journey, why do you think people often discredit certain skills that they could transfer, but they're not sure how to do that?
That's a real, and John, I'm sure you've run into folks like this in your career and what you're doing and helping people. And I've ran into that a lot as well, even recently. And I think sometimes people get really hung up on so for instance, the job description, right? Of course, you want to look at the job description. And I think what I try to help people focus on is sometimes I'll be working with some folks who I've had a chance to do some speaking recently, some networking events, and helping people out. And I'll say, hey, here's an opportunity I think you should look at. And it seems like the first thing they'll go to is the pieces they can't do.
Yep.
If that makes sense. And I'm going like, hey, wait, that's only maybe 10, 20%. You've got the 70 or 80 over here. So let's focus on your strengths and what you can do. And then let's think about some of the things you've done in the past. And maybe it's not been in this industry, but you can say, hey, for instance, if it's sales, okay, I haven't done healthcare sales, but I've done sales in this area, which I think I really feel can relate and help me pick this piece up that maybe is that piece of the puzzle that maybe they feel like they're lacking. And I think sometimes that's what I've been seeing is just try not to get too focused on that 10, 20% that you don't have. Look at that 70 to 80 that you do have. And I think that seems to be the piece that I see a lot with folks who are, as you mentioned, either developing their career, mid-career transitioning, or trying to go somewhere in a different path. Is look at what you've done and how can you apply that to that new role. And even though you may not been in that industry, let's turn it, make it more of a positive, right? I've done this, and I really feel like this can, translate nicely into what you're doing. I've been successful here. I have no reason to believe I'm not going to be successful in this space.
You drive the point home so well about it is about how you tell your story and how you can overcome an objection in an interview or even in the application process as to where somebody may not think your background aligns well with the job description, but you believe that it can. We know from a lot of research that our brain typically defaults to the negative 75% of the time, right? So it makes a lot of sense when we're looking at that job posting and going, I can't do that. I can't do that. And all of a sudden you've talked yourself out of the job.
Exactly. Right.
So what advice do you have for people who are in that spot where they're talking themselves out of applying for the job? Or maybe the better question here, Wes, is they're talking themselves into applying for the job.
Mm-hmm.
How do you help them come across as being more confident and competent as opposed to feeling like they have to convince them they're the best person for the job?
Oh, that's great. I think, John, that what I really try to do is, and I did this, of course, with myself, is, because I kind of, as you mentioned, fell into that same mindset at one point too. It's like, you start looking at the negative. I think let's look at the skills you have and what are you really good at? What are those strengths that you have? And let's focus on those and take it from the point of, hey, they're, when I talk about them, those skills with the interviewer or that hiring manager, they're going to see that, and they're going to see that I'm not having to, like you said, convince myself. I'm not trying to kind of convince myself that I can, jump off the diving board here, right? And I'm scared to death, right? Yeah. Let's look at those skills. You have these skills, and let's talk about how you can apply them to this new role or this new career advancement. I think one of the biggest jumps, or at least it was for me, the hardest jumps was, like you get like to be a manager and you want to be a director or VP. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't be a director. I'm just so glad I'm a manager, right? But if you start stopping, you think, well, look at what I've done as a manager. I've managed people, 7, 8, 9, 10 people. Well, I can make that jump, looking at other folks and what they're doing. So I think it's just trying to really be confident in your skills that you currently have, and don't feel like you said, you're having to convince somebody on something like, what's the whole saying, fake it till you make it, that you're not doing that, right? I mean, you have these skills. You just now need to convey them that you can do it in this particular industry or in this new role that you might be, trying to go towards, and I think that's what I really that's what I hope I'm conveying in my book and what I've tried to do myself. And when I do chance to talk to some folks about that, is let's really let's be confident in your skills, because you have them, you have those skills. Let's focus on those strengths.
Throughout your career, Wes, have you ever interviewed people for positions?
I have.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So looking at it from the interviewer side,
right.
When does your BS meter go off with somebody?
No, that's a good one. John, when let's see, I'm trying to say I can kind of hopefully make sense to everybody. So from my perspective, I grew up, you probably can imagine, playing sports my whole life. I played every sport imaginable, whatever the season was. And that was, I think, really helped me a lot in my career, giving me discipline. And I think the big thing that I learned there was working with people and working and looking and really trying to look at strengths. When you're building a team of a sports team, just a real quick example of, if anybody that's a fan of the 90s Chicago Bulls with the great Michael Jordan. I mean, if you had 5 Michael Jordans on the team, they may not have been the team they were because you wouldn't have had enough basketballs to go around to everybody because they all want it, right? And so I think looking at how can you build a team. So when I'm interviewing folks, of course, would look at their resume and, really try to look at their interpersonal skills. That really meant a lot to me because I knew they were going to be working with different groups and different people. And as a manager, the last thing I want to be doing is having to go behind somebody and cleaning up somebody's mess because they're, not working well or getting along well. So to me, that was always very important, was their interpersonal skills. I felt like I could pick up on that pretty quickly. I think some of the skills, sometimes people might allow, maybe exaggerate a little bit on some of their skills, and you can start asking some more pointed questions to determine, okay, there may be, maybe they're, exaggerating this particular skill a little bit long, and there's that, as you said, the BS meter starts going off a little bit, right? But I really try to look at those interpersonal skills a lot. That always helped me, and again, I sometimes I would take somebody that may on paper didn't look good as someone else, but I knew that they were sincere and they weren't, as you mentioned, kind of being that salesperson, so to speak, and that's interpersonal skill was going to be something that was going to come in real handy. And I feel like I can pick up passion when people have a passion for something. And some people are just, again, trying to convince you, as you said, about this. And so I would try to look for those things and look for, what have you done? Give me some examples, some concrete examples. If you say you've done these, you should be able to give me some good examples. And that's usually Absolutely. If they started being too generic with that, then you can kind of feel like, okay, well, maybe they didn't quite have that level,
And concrete examples are those things that when a person who's interviewing, when they can ground things in evidence, right? Yes. The BS meter goes away because now they're talking very specifically, like to your point, about right. very concrete and tangible things. Right. Because we know interviews are stressful, yes. especially if somebody really wants the job or they want to get out of a toxic work situation or right. they've been laid off and they haven't had a job for a while. It can be so easy to show up from that place of, well, just give me a chance.
Yes.
And that doesn't always resonate well when you and I have been on the other side of the table and interviewing talent and going, all right, let's take some time. Let's dig a little deeper in here. Like, I like you, but we got to really make sure you're the right fit in that.
Exactly.
And so, Wes, it brings up another point here that I absolutely wanted to talk to you about, because as we've gotten to know each other a little bit and I've been following you, if there's a word that comes up for me to describe your career path, it's resilient. And it is something which for a lot of mid-career professionals, they know they should do, but right. admittedly, we all struggle with it. Mm-hmm. We all struggle with being like, all right, I got another no, and I got to be resilient because that's what I'm supposed to do. So for you, what does it mean to be resilient? And what do you do when you're close, but you're not getting the results you want?
No, and I really appreciate that too, John, about that. And I really think that, that has helped me probably the most in my career. I really believe, as I mentioned maybe a few minutes ago, I really believe playing sports growing up my whole life, and even at the college level and in the professional wrestling, really helped me so much in being resilient, because you have to, in those sports, you have to learn. I've, played baseball at the collegiate level, and you go 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. And if you continue to wallow in that, then guess what? You're going to turn around and probably go 0 for 5 the next game, right? So you have to kind of put it in your rearview mirror and have a little bit of a short-term memory on that. So, and even when I got into professional wrestling, if I hadn't had that resiliency, I probably would have stopped at the first no, because, it wasn't like the first time I reached out to somebody, they were like, oh yeah, great. Come on. We want you. It takes time. And so I think having that, and I think it really goes back to your passion and how bad do you really, maybe for lack of a better word, how bad do you really want it? I mean, with jobs too. I mean, once I started growing my career, I set my focus on a C-level position with a chief information officer, and I applied for several and had some good interviews, but didn't get it, right? But I didn't stop. I said, it's the right time's going to happen, and it did. And unfortunately, it didn't end up working out the way I wanted it. But I think, having that resiliency to continue, because I know it's tough. You feel like you've nailed the interview. You feel like I've got this job. You're the other person on the other side saying, starts talk. I hate when interviewers start saying, well, when you're managing the team and you're doing this, and then they don't hire you or give you that offer letter, right? But I think it's really about just not giving up and trying to have a good network of friends, your faith, whatever the case may be. And to keep you positive and keep you motivated, that opportunity is going to come, and you keep putting in the work and keep going. Sometimes it's a numbers game. You have to continue to keep applying, right? And then that right opportunity is going to pop. But I think you have to have that resiliency and that perseverance to keep moving, because if you stop at the first no, you're done. I mean, we've all heard stories of many what we would consider successful people who failed many, 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 many times, right? And I think it's just how do you take that failure and learn from it? And say, was there something? And I know it's tough, John. I know you being in the business you're in, a lot of times it's hard to get feedback from interviewers, right? And it could be legally, they may are concerned or whatever the case may be, but you'd love to be able to say, what was it? I felt like I had it,
right.
Was there something that and that's hard. That's hard to get that. And I understand it from a legal perspective. I get that, but I know it's tough. But I think it's just keeping that perseverance, have folks like yourself, coaches that can help you, people that can maybe tighten up your resume a little bit, but it's really perseverance. And as you mentioned, resiliency, you've got to keep pushing. That's usually a lot of people that succeed. It's usually not always, and I'm not the smartest person in the room. I think sometimes that resiliency and persistence will keep you moving.
Yeah. You said so many great things there. And when we think about persevering or we think about resilience, we know what it means, but until we actually have to do it.
Right.
And that's what you were sharing with us there, which was you have to go through it in order to know who you are as a resilient individual. Because to your point, especially in the marketplace we're dealing with right now, companies are much more selective.
Yeah.
They're taking longer to make hiring decisions. And so this is one of those questions that I can't ask everybody in the way that I'm going to ask you, because your background is so unique. As somebody who professionally wrestled, who dealt with crowds and fans and TV, I mean, obviously when you were wrestling, you didn't have social media,
right?
But certainly we know that the stars today are leveraging social media in a lot of ways. You've had to learn this skill of self-promotion.
Right.
For the mid-career professional who is listening to this going, I don't know how to talk about myself. Right. I don't want to come across as bragging. I don't want to come across as being better than everybody else. What advice can you give them to help them self-promote more genuinely and authentically?
Okay. No, great. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I was, I guess, either fortunate or unfortunate to be not in the day of social media back then. But, you're right. You have to self-promote yourself, because at the end of the day, you don't have too many people in your, I'm not saying you don't have people in your corner, but not a lot of people who are out there, doing the promotion for you, right? You're going to have to do that. I mean, years and years and years ago, you always felt like, hey, I do a great job, and that's going to be enough to get me up the ladder or where I'm trying to go. So I think that you're definitely going to have to self-promote yourself. And I think, John, what I would recommend is utilizing folks like you and others who can help give you that elevator pitch, right? That, couple minutes about yourself, writing those 2 or 3 paragraphs that, about yourself that you can rehearse and have down, and utilizing the tools, the LinkedIn's of the world, getting out there and, putting some posts out there on areas that you may have areas of expertise on to help show that, that you are promoting this. So I think really working with someone like yourself, a career coach, a resume writer. I know when I first had a professional resume writer help me, that helped me a lot, because I, again, tendency not to put as much as I probably should. They were really pulling things out of me that said, you're doing more than you think. So I think working with those kind of folks, investing in yourself, and just know that it's hopefully realize that you're not bragging, but you got to put yourself out there to get yourself noticed, right? And try to continue to do that, and just really work with those professionals that can help you in that area that you're seeing.
No, that's really good advice. And thank you for that, because it is one of the things that I know, both from my own journey and how to get better at it, from also the people I get to work with every day. It is one of the most difficult things, right?
Yeah.
They're so used to talking about in the collective, in the plural. We did this, the team achieved this result. It's so hard to get them to go for first person.
Exactly.
And talk about it. And well, here's what I did.
Exactly.
It's just that whole mindset shift. Wes, I've so enjoyed our conversation. And as always, the time just seems to fly by, but we need to start wrapping up.
Yeah.
So for the people who are listening that are navigating their career, what advice would you give to them today to help them build their mid-career GPS?
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure, John. I've always enjoyed speaking with you, and I just can't thank you enough for having me today. So thank you again so much for this. I think the biggest advice I would give to everyone, John, is, something that I put in my book. I kind of like acronyms, and it's work. I know it's really creative, but like where do you want to be, or where do you want to go? And then opportunities. Look at the opportunities, and then as you mentioned earlier, resilience. R for resilience, and and of course, perseverance goes along with that. And then knowledge. I don't think you can ever. It's never too late to learn. Whether it's, if you don't want to, go back and get a degree, it's certifications. There's always things you can learn through webinars. There's all sorts of tools. So I think it's really looking at those things and taking an inventory of your skills, and believe in yourself. Believe in yourself, as you mentioned, have that confidence in those strengths that you have and how you can apply them and use those, and perseverance, and go forward. If you want it bad enough, you can get there. It may not happen the first time or the second time, but you got to kind of go through those ups and downs, but the right one will come, the right timing will come. And it will, because last thing you want to do is wrong timing on someplace, and then you're back in square one again, as they say. So I think it's just keeping that resilient mindset, and have positive people around you working with you, and using your networks.
Yeah. It is spot on. And it's such great advice. And I thank you for sharing that. So, Wes, if people want to connect with you, they want to learn more about you, get your book, follow you, I'm going to turn the microphone over to you, my friend. Share with us all the details and the great things, or how people can connect with you.
Thank you so much, John. Again, I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure speaking with you, and all the great things you're doing. I think if anybody'd like to connect, I'd love to hear from some folks. I have a website. It's called offthetoropebook.com, and you can connect with me through that. My book's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and most any retailers, I think, where books are sold. I've always wanted to say that, but that's it. I believe it's it's out there about anywhere you want to find it. But would love to hear from some folks. I'm also on Instagram at Wes Ray Author as well, and Twitter at Prof Ray, PROF RHEA on Twitter. So trying to get more involved in the social media as well, but love to hear from some folks and connect with me any way you can, and anything I can do to help, I'm always happy to do that. But so thanks again, John. I really appreciate it so much.
Yeah, you are most welcome, Wes. And thank you again for coming on the pod to just talk with us today and share your amazing story, and really kind of drive in this message about how we can transfer our skills to get the life and career we want. I will put all of those links in the show notes for everybody. Wes Ray, thank you for being a fantastic guest on the Mid-Career GPS podcast.
Thanks again, John. Appreciate it. Have a great day, my friend.
All right, you too. So, my friends, if there's one takeaway that I have from my conversation with Wes today, is that we need to be better at how we tell our story in transferring our skills when we're navigating our career to something else. We all have experiences. You are here in this moment based on the totality of all your experiences. If you are going to make a career pivot, what are the skills that you have gained up until this point that are of value and needed to a future employer, as evident by the job description? That whether you think you meet 50, 70, 80, 90% of the things that are listed in that job description, how are you going to help them? We say that all the time here on the podcast. How are you going to help somebody? Your skills and how to transfer them are the key to unlocking that part of your story that makes you a much more memorable candidate and gets more hiring managers interested in who you are and what you do, rather than simply finding you interesting. So until next time, my friends, remember this: we build our mid-career GPS 1 mile or 1 step at a time, and how we show up matters. Make it a great rest of your day. Thank you for listening to the Mid-Career GPS podcast. Make sure to follow on your favorite listening platform. And if you have a moment, I'd love to hear your comments on Apple Podcasts. Visit johnnerrell.com for more information about how I can help you build your mid-career GPS, or how I can help you and your organization with your next workshop or public speaking event. Don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn and follow me on social at John Nerrell Coaching. I look forward to being back with you next week. Until then, take care, and remember, how we show up matters.